In this video of stage etiquette, I'm going to talk briefly about the topic of your facial expressions, more or less, or your attitude while receiving notes from the conductor. The short story of the long here is that when a conductor asks you to do something, play a phrase smoother or take a breath in a certain spot that you weren't doing or whatever, you say okay and you mark your part. Well, you don't say okay, but you say okay and you mark your part. The main issue I just want to go over here in this, or the main point that I want to get across in this video, is to never act like what you think that whatever the conductor is asking of you is not a good idea, or it's impossible and they just don't understand what it's like to play the flute, or to be rude or roll your eyes, that sort of thing. You don't see that very often from musicians, of course, because you'll never be hired again if you act like that. But you know, every once in a while you do. Somebody will get a note from the conductor, "Can you do this?" And they just act like it's the most impossible thing in the world, or they're just super annoyed, and you never see those people again. All my videos and what I'm focusing on is the world of freelancing versus full-time orchestra. It's an entirely different universe in the full-time orchestra. So this topic of not outwardly seeming annoyed like this conductor's an idiot, which you shouldn't even have that thought anyway, but it's amazing and appalling actually how frequent that happens in full-time orchestra rehearsals in my experience. It just does not fly in the regional orchestra arena. So regional orchestras are full of freelancers. You just would never ever do that. When a conductor is asking you to do something, he or she is not asking for your opinion on it. You're just supposed to do it because it's the conductor's interpretation of the piece. So it may be you're playing some standard repertoire like Beethoven 5, Tchaikovsky 5, whatever, something, and you always take a breath here, or you always play at this tempo or whatever, and you have some conductor who's doing things differently. You just do it differently. Also, sometimes you might find that the conductor is like truly asking something of you that's not really possible. Maybe asking you to play something much louder, and you're playing literally as loud as you can. What you don't say is, "I'm playing it as loud as I can," or maybe the inflection, everything is in the way you say things. So what I would just recommend always doing is saying okay and then marking it, or pretending to mark even, and then you just play it as loud. You just play it the way you've been playing it because that's as loud as you can play it. You just have to let things go and do the best you can and try to accommodate the conductor as best you can, because again, it's not about you, it's about the conductor's interpretation, and your job as one of the many instrumentalists in the orchestra is to do what is asked of you by the conductor for the purpose of the music. Ideally, you should be able to make adjustments on the spot, like all of a sudden be able to tongue something that was slurred, or take a breath in a different place at the moment without being able to go home and practice it first. And things like that are expected of you, and as a professional you should be able to accommodate most reasonable requests. On this general topic of stage etiquette, reminded me of a article I read from Garrison Keillor. His wife is a professional freelance violinist. He had written this short essay on observing his wife, like coming home and telling stories of being in orchestra rehearsal or at the concert. And his biggest observance was that when people don't do things in the orchestra professionally, everything was about professional, which is the same thing as stage etiquette, doing things correctly. That's the worst offense you can make. It's not a wrong note, it's if you act unprofessional. And I dug up on the internet this article, and the article it's an essay, is called "A Foot Soldier in God's Floating Orchestra." He mentions at one point in the essay, I'll just read right from it, where he says there's this concept of professionalism that are expressed in certain principles, and you won't find this list posted backstage. And he goes on to say, but my wife tells me that's because everybody knows this stuff right out of music school. So it's stuff you just sort of pick up from experience, from being on the job. And so he has a list of like nine or so things of these professionalism or stage etiquette concepts. But down number 7, he writes about receiving conductor's notes, which is, he says, try to do the conductor's bidding, no matter how ridiculous. If he says, play this very dry, but with plenty of vibrato, go ahead and do it, though it's impossible. If he says, this should be very quick, but sustained, then go ahead and sustain the quick. Or levitate, or walk across the ceiling, or whatever he wants. He's the boss. And then towards the end, when he's summarizing this weird world of orchestral freelancing etiquette, he says, it's all about manners and maintaining a sense of integrity in a selfless situation and surviving in a body of neurotic perfectionists. Yeah, it's just a really funny essay. I'll link it in the description. You might want to check it out. Again, just to summarize, you don't ever receive a note from the conductor and go, like, don't ever do that or you'll never be back. So I hope that stuff was helpful. Check out, I have a whole playlist of orchestral etiquette videos. If you're in the orchestral freelancing world, I would invite you to check out these other videos on things like how and when do you ask a question? How do you get on and off the stage if you don't play every piece in the orchestra or in the concert? You know, things like that you only learn through experience on the job. No one teaches you this stuff. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.